How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. It's Eric Erickson here. I hope you're doing well. The phone number is 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. I am happy to have you. And of course, we got today and tomorrow, and then I'm going to step out for Thanksgiving. So I hope that you guys, if you got questions, now's your time. Don't forget, if you text the word recipe, singular, recipe, no S on the end, to 33777, you can get the cookbook, all the recipes I make for the holiday season. Boy, did I made my buddy, Benton Palmer has a bacon jam recipe, and I made that yesterday, and holy cow. Put that on top of sliders, and I modified it a little bit. I'll tweak it to make it my own before I give you that. In any event, we gotta begin. The left, they're not having a normal one. I have to begin with a correction. 2 weeks ago, came word that Eva Longoria, the actress, had left the United States because of the Trump election. She was living in Mexico and Europe, commuting between the two. And it became a big national news story. It was all over. CNN ran a story on it. Multiple news outlets ran a story on it. But Anna Navarro is a friend of Eva Longoria's. And Anna Navarro, I know they're good friends. And Anna says it's not true. She was already living in Mexico. She's been living there for 3 years. It's not true. It appears, however, to be true that Ellen DeGeneres has left the country with Portia de Rossi. They've moved to England. They've moved to England. Now, I got to say, though, there's a difference, I think, between actresses in Hollywood who are moving overseas because in their bubble, they believe the world has come to an end, because in the Hollywood bubble, you believe all sorts of bizarre things. And in the Hollywood bubble, everyone is convinced Donald Trump is the second coming of Hitler and the like. But it's different between them and a reporter. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution has begun to run an occasional series exploring people's decisions to leave the United States. And they have decided to start with Todd Kopilowitz. I don't know how you quite pronounce his last name, Todd Kopilowitz something. He describes himself as a marketing consultant, but not just any marketing consultant. He's a former reporter and columnist for the Dallas Morning News. And I want you to just listen to some of this. Growing up in the Midwest, I couldn't fathom how a nation could embrace someone like Hitler, or how America justified locking up 120,000 Japanese Americans in detention camps. I was raised to believe most people had a breaking point, a moral red line that once crossed would stop them. Now I know better. Fear, weaponized, simple scapegoats offered. The toxic cocktail blinds people. It happened in Germany, Bosnia, Myanmar, Cambodia, Stalin's Russia. Less than a month ago, my heart dropped like a lead weight. The nightmare came home. Fury and fear have been spinning in my head ever since. Donald Trump will soon be president again, this time with a MAGA-led Republican Congress and a rubber-stamped Supreme Court ready to greenlight whatever hateful agenda he couldn't finish the first time. He's armed and ready to bulldoze decency. For a horrified number of Americans, the misogyny, racism, and anti-Semitism didn't matter, or worse, they liked it. That's not just alarming, it's sickening. We're not in Kansas anymore. This is Nazi Germany territory. Wow. Wow. In our house, we've seen too much of the inhumanity humans are capable of. My wife spent years in combat zones as a TV photojournalist and video editor. And 2020, as journalists in the United States were beaten on live TV during the George Floyd protests, it was like a portal opening to her past. It wasn't the Trump administration, by the way, beating the journalists. More than anything, it was the protesters themselves attacking journalists. This is remarkable. This is remarkable. He spent a decade as a crime reporter and a decade helping the Marine Corps recruit young men and women. And yet he looks on the country and he doesn't recognize it. He was a reporter, but these are people poisoned by their own prejudices. And I need you to understand that. This guy views himself as the righteous one when he's actually the bad guy. Yes, he actually is the bad guy. He views his fellow Americans as dumb. He views his fellow Americans as willing to support an authoritarian. He truly believed democracy is under attack, as opposed to it's just another election. And by the way, Donald Trump, his first 2 years in office, also had a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a conservative Supreme Court. And it was a pretty, when you get right down to it, normal Republican administration. If anything, Donald Trump this time has more progressives in his cabinet than he had last time. He's picked a guy who worked for George Soros. He's picked a woman who supports the Democrats' unionization beliefs, supports amnesty, and opposes school choice. Donald Trump's got a Democrat for Secretary of Health and Human Services, and his team just blocked one of the most pro-life professionals in the country from being in HHS. He's picked a celebrity doctor who supports gender transitions to be in charge of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. And you think that he's going to be some sort of Hitler come to town? This is the problem with these people. They believe their own BS. And it gets to the problem with reporters generally. Reporters are some of the most arrogant and lazy people. You talk to people in politics, you talk to people in the Jews generally, and what comes about largely when you get to these levels is you're being spoon-fed stories. They lack intellectual curiosity. This guy lacks intellectual curiosity. He doesn't want to know why people might have voted for Trump, nor does he want to understand how his own Supreme Court could block him. They don't want to do any of that. He just wants to believe his own prejudice. And his own prejudice is this: Americans are bad. It's why these Hollywood libs can leave the country. They don't like the United States. They don't like you and me. They live their cloistered existence in Hollywood, the left coast. And now suddenly they can't understand how anyone could have voted for Donald Trump. They really do believe. I bet this guy really does believe that everybody's economy is just fine. I bet this guy really believes all of the bad things. And in fact, he does. We're watching the fabric of our society, our culture get shredded in front of us. In Texas, they offer bounties for turning in women seeking abortions. That's not actually true. Across red states, cruelty is being legislated with zeal, banning water breaks for road crews, criminalizing compassion, targeting LGBTQ plus people as public enemies. Decency is a crime. Hate is a virtue. This is not my America. Now, what is this? Last year, Texas nabbed headlines for legislation that eliminated heat-related employer rules across municipalities, including rules mandating water breaks for outdoor workers in industries like construction. Dubbed the Death Star bill by critics, it led to a legal battle, but ultimately went into effect, meaning employers cannot be required to provide workers with outdoor water breaks or time in the shade to avoid potential heat-related illnesses. What exactly was this about? See, he's believing the worst, and you yourselves are probably duped. So what is this? Texas signed a law. It would eliminate mandatory water breaks for state construction workers. Why? Because in Austin, Texas, and Dallas, the progressives decided that every 10 minutes, every 4 hours, construction workers have to take a break. And what happened is it drove up compliance costs for the state. This doesn't apply to the private sector. It applies to local governments that were trying to exert themselves over state control. Now, obviously, if a worker needs water, they can take water. There's no problem. And this is part of the opposite concern, that this guy doesn't want to see, this guy doesn't want to hear, this guy doesn't want to understand. That these local governments decided to mandate every 4 hours, you got to have a 10-minute break. What the construction teams say is that obviously if a worker is thirsty, the worker can get water. But mandating every 4 hours, all work has to come to a stop for 10 minutes is inefficient because not every worker needs to stop every 4 hours for 10 minutes, that they should be able to stop as need be. And this only applies to state workers, and this is local governments slowing down construction development and making it one size fits all in a way they didn't need it. But this guy has internalized this, that this is some sort of abomination. No one banned water breaks for road crews, and that's what he writes. It's not actually true. No one banned water breaks. What they banned was shutting all work down for 10 minutes every 4 hours, which is ultimately what it amounted to. But he believes it, and you're not going to challenge him on it because he's convinced of his own righteousness, and that's the problem with progressives. You know, I can't separate my worldview from this. I believe there's a heaven and a hell and a God, and I'm supposed to be humble. I don't get everything right. These guys are convinced they get it all right, and you yourselves are the bad people. Neighbors are turning on neighbors, he writes. Cultural differences are being criminalized. Children are weaponized as pawns in deportation schemes. We're teetering on the edge of a free fall into rock bottom, pulling anyone with a shred of decency down with us. I'm glad this guy is leaving. Ironically, he's going to Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is a place where if you stand outside and preach the gospel, you might wind up in jail. Northern Ireland is also a place where if you say that men cannot become women, or you say something critical on social media of the government, they can show up at your doorstep and arrest you. But he believes that's better than here. Because what this guy ultimately doesn't want is you. He's not really concerned about Donald Trump. He's concerned about you. He's decided he's superior. And that is the common theme of all these people fleeing the country, is they've decided that they're smarter than you. And they shouldn't have to put up with democracy. They shouldn't have to put up with your vote. They preach democracy all they want. But when they don't get their way, they take their football and flee. And I hope that he will make it a permanent stay, and not just for the next 4 years. Because people like that are why so many Americans revolted and decided to stand with Donald Trump. They don't like these preachy progressives who insist that they're right and you're wrong, and they win and you lose every time. his disgust with what happened is the same disgust we should hold for a man like that. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. Delighted to have you with me. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, happy to have you. Be patient with me. I will get to your phone calls when we come back after the next segment. Right now, I got to tell you, this is kind of wild to me. There was a video posted on social media over the weekend. It is of a woman who is yelling for a final solution against Jews in Montreal, Canada. So, video shows up. It's a protest, and there are Palestinians in the streets, and there are people holding Russian flags, which I thought was interesting. And there are Jews in the street, and a woman in a mask wearing a Palestinian scarf starts calling for a final solution for the Jews in Montreal. Now, as you should know, the final solution is the Nazi language for the extermination of the Jews. And this woman is calling for a final solution against the Jews. Now, interestingly enough, she's got sunglasses on. She's wearing a COVID mask. She's got her head, so she's very, very anonymous. Someone followed her to see who she was. It turns out she runs a coffee shop inside the Jewish General Hospital of Montreal. The woman, her name's Maya, runs the coffee shop inside the Jewish General Hospital in Montreal and is in the streets, all covered up to be anonymous, calling for the extermination of Jews in Montreal. Second Cup is the coffee company in Montreal, Canada that she's affiliated with. They have canceled her franchise. They have shut her down. You know, I'm not big on cancel culture. When you have a woman in the streets calling for the extermination of Jews and she runs a coffee shop inside the Jewish General Hospital, it might not be a good fit for her or the people who might want a cup of coffee while they're visiting relatives in the hospital. Goodness gracious. People are broken, and the internet allows us so many opportunities to see that brokenness. Now, I got to tell you about Swiss America and the secret war on cash that's out there, because Swiss America has been trying to explain to people that the government is trying to make sure your anonymous cash purchases are not. It is a secret war on cash. Swiss America is rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. They've been the trusted leader in precious metals for 40 years in this country. Their report takes less than 15 minutes to read. All you have to do to get a free copy of it is call 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash includes digital forms of currency as well. So you can get the Secret War on Cash report completely for free from Swiss America. Just mention my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K, when you call or text 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. You get the report completely for free. Just mention Eric, E-R-I-C-K, when you call or text 800-289-2646. One more time, 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Let's go to the phones. Edwin in Orlando, Florida. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Eric. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for calling.
Listen, I just want to ask you, up to 1971, the dollar was backed by the gold standard. Nixon took that away, and then since then, it seems like the dollar's been in decline. The current environment, we could go back to the gold standard, backing the dollar. Would that help our economy? Being that I know China and Russia have been buying gold, and other countries, are the economy moving to that? And if they do, would that back crypto if ever the monetary system change?
Yeah, so here's why I don't think that's going to happen, Edwin. Whether it's good or not to move to the gold standard, and even free market economists are divided on it. The Austrian school, very much so. The Friedman school, not so much. The reason is because essentially we have what's called fiat currency now, where all the countries got together and said we're going to set a value for our currency. We don't have enough gold to back the American dollar at this moment. It would actually wreak some havoc on our economy if we were to transition back. There are plenty of economists who have plans to transition back. I just don't think it's going to happen because no other country is going to do it. And if no other country is going to do it, it'll allow those countries to buy up gold reserves and mess with our economy. We got to do something, though. We have crossed $35 trillion in national debt. Over the weekend, we crossed $35 trillion in national debt. So Trump, what's his Treasury Secretary? Secretary Trump, it is, yes, Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent, it's an interesting story. I don't know that a prior to Trump, the GOP would have an openly gay, married with kids Treasury Secretary. That has nothing to do with the job of Treasury Secretary. It's not relevant to it. I just don't know that prior to Trump, the GOP would have done it. It's kind of for all the yelling on the left, like that journalist who's moved to Northern Ireland. The idea that a guy like Trump would pick an openly gay, married with kids, Treasury Secretary, and to say he's some sort of conservative authoritarian despot setting back the lives of the gay community is kind of absurd. Scott Bessent worked for George Soros. That should be the red flag for Trump supporters. He worked for George Soros. He was one of Soros's right-hand guys. Now, I am told very reliably, that he's actually a very sharp pick and will do wonders to undermine Trump's protectionist agenda, which I like. I'm not a protectionist. I don't want tariffs, and Bessent apparently is an enemy of tariffs and will work to undermine them from within, which I am totally happy with. He was a Democratic donor and worked for Soros, though. It's a little bit wild. But I don't see he very much would not want to go to a gold standard, so I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, I want to shift from that to what Seth Moulton said. We've mentioned Seth Moulton here. Seth Moulton is a Democratic member of Congress from Massachusetts who said the Democrats need to get over this idea that boys should be in girls' sports, and was then protested. Peter Savadnik at the Free Press has this piece. In a parallel universe, progressives would be rallying around Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton. They would respect his courage for saying what so many of them have been thinking since Donald Trump thumped Kamala Harris in the presidential election. They would be urging him publicly to run for president. A billionaire, perhaps in Silicon Valley or New York, would have launched a super PAC called Moulton 2028, calling the congressman the voice America needs. They would love him. But in this universe, the one we actually inhabit, they hate him. We've worked so hard at becoming tolerant that we've become intolerant, Moulton, who represents the suburbs north of Boston, told me Wednesday. The hate started 2 weeks ago when Moulton told the New York Times in an article explaining why Kamala Harris lost that the Democratic Party had become overly focused on trans issues. Quote, Democrats spend too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges many Americans face. I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete, but as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. Moulton's daughters are 6 and 3, and he told me he was talking about team sports they might play when they're older. When I asked what prompted him to make comments that he must have known would antagonize his fellow Democrats, who have long adhered to the orthodoxy that trans women are women who should be able to compete in girls' sports, he replied, I was speaking authentically as a dad about a concern that I know other dads share, and we just ought to be able to debate it. Since then, he's been referred to as a Nazi cooperator, transphobic, and offensive. Democrats have said he should resign. His campaign manager stepped down. Democratic Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, who is gay, attacked Moulton for playing politics. Jake Auchincloss, who, like Moulton, is a former Marine and now a Democratic congressman from Massachusetts, distanced himself from Moulton's trans remarks. Meanwhile, the chair of Tufts University's political science department threatened to bar students from interning in Moulton's office, which prompted the college's high command to assure the congressman they still like him. Tufts is a major recipient of National Institutes of Health grants, probably not wise to lash out at a member of the Massachusetts delegation. 66% of Americans oppose trans girls in sports, boys in girls sports. James Carville, over the weekend, was talking on MSNBC on Morning Joe. I guess it was this morning. And I want to play you this audio from James Carville.
Well, let's start. Back in March, I said that I thought Democratic campaign culture had, quote, too many preachy females, unquote. Well, they all had a conniption. If you looked at the male vote that we got in November, no one since November has come up and said a thing to me. Primarily, we have a large problem with males. And I'm not just talking about white males like you and I'm talking about males all across. And we need to address that. And we don't need to be shouted down by Washington liberal advocacy groups at NPR. We got to say we got a male problem and we need to get to work on it. And I think we can.
You can, but not when you shout down a guy like Seth Moulton. Moulton is a liberal. Moulton believes in gay rights. He believes in all the things that progressives say they want: diversity, equality, and inclusion. But he's also a dad. He's also got common sense, and he doesn't believe boys should be in girls' sports. That even after a boy transitions to being a girl, there's still a physical, biological advantage based on muscle mass, bone density, and the like. And this isn't disputed by real scientists. The only scientists who dispute it are the ones who have PhDs in women and gender studies. And yet he's now being vilified for speaking the truth. April Ryan, again, progressive reporter. She's on this panel discussion this morning. Listen to this as the Democrats try to diagnose their losses.
Well, and April Ryan, I mean, that's a lot of people are sitting there going, wait a second, why are Democrats losing working class white voters? Why are Democrats losing working class Hispanic voters? Why are Democrats even losing some working class black voters, especially black men? It was overstated about black men, the degree, but there's no doubt there is a trend that Democrats are losing a lot of people that have been their base for a long time. Why do you think that is?
Tone deafness. At this point, you have to think about this. Politics is personal and it's also pocketbook. This is not new, though, for Black America, for Latino America, for those who are underserved. Think about the 1960s. Think about the March on Washington with Dr. King. Think about if Robert Kennedy Sr. and Dr. Martin Luther King would have lived, they would have dealt with issues of poverty. And one thing that I did ask Robert Kennedy Jr. at the debate in Philadelphia, after the debate in the spin room, I said, what if your father and Dr. King had lived? They were dealing with the issue of poverty. Who is the president that would deal with that issue more so than the other? And he said Donald Trump, which was surprising to hear that, as Democrats are thought to be the ones who deal with this. And they are imploding now because of this, because of the tone deafness that so many people have told them about, and they didn't listen.
A tone deafness. It's not that they were tone deaf, it's that they didn't listen. They didn't listen. They didn't listen on the economy. They lectured people and told them they had it good. They haven't listened to people about trans rights. And in fact, I didn't bother with any of the audio. Every Sunday show yesterday vilified Nancy Mace for wanting to keep Sarah McBride, the man from Delaware who has transitioned, is now a trans woman member of Congress, wanted to keep him out of women's bathrooms, and they all vilified her. Lectured censoriousness of the Democrats. They've got real problems. They've got real problems. They are smug. They do believe that history is on their side. They like that line. And yet, history's not on their side. History's not really on anybody's side, for that matter. But the reality is that the Democrats, they're not willing to listen to the working class. They're not willing to listen to men. They are obsessed with elite gay men and neurotic white women. And in fact, I go back to after the election was over. I talked to a senior Democratic strategist, every single one of you would know. And he and multiple other Democrats venting to me about the election and Kamala Harris's loss said that the Democratic Party has been hijacked by wealthy gay men and neurotic white women, and that's what the party caters to. They don't know how to message to men. Remember the Jimmy Kimmel writer who did the video of I'm a man and I'm going to vote for women? It was the most absurd thing. It wasn't a Kamala Harris thing. It was tied to Kamala Harris, but it wasn't. It was a comedy writer for Jimmy Kimmel. But those are the sorts of people who are the ones trying to message to men, and it just simply doesn't work. They are completely out to lunch on this. And when James Carville said at the time, we got too many of these preachy women out there talking, he was crucified by Democrats, and he was right. The lecturing tones from NPR and the like have turned off men, but not just men. And that's, I think, the data that people miss. A majority, not a plurality, a majority of married women voted for Donald Trump in this election. A majority of married women voted for Donald Trump. That is the same data that shows us how massive the swing for men for Donald Trump was. Majority of married women voted for Mitt Romney, too, in 2012. And it was kind of a harbinger of bad things to come for the Democrats when a majority of married women voted Republican in 2012, just as it is now in 2024. It's because the Democrats are losing families. And there are still more people who wish to have families in this country than don't. And those people, they're the ones who are on the right side of history because they are building the legacies of history through building families. When you've lost families, which Democrats have, you've lost America. That reporter who's fleeing the country, it's his side who's lost the country. It's his side who's become intolerant. It's his side who's become censorious. But Democrats never, ever, ever have to learn history because they never have to learn the past because they're always about the future, and they never, ever see themselves as the villains, even though in this case, they're the bad guys, and they're the ones Americans rejected. And instead of having any sort of humility, they've decided to just blame everybody else. Now, you will blame yourself if you don't go take advantage of this great deal at EdenPureDeals.com and you put in discount code ERIC3, ERICK3. You can get 3 of the brand new Eden Pure Thunderstorms for less than $200. You save $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3. So what is the Eden Pure Thunderstorm? Well, it's an air purifier. So it gets rid of dust, pollen, pet dander, all that floating in the air. But where it really shines is it's an odor eliminator. It generates ozone, and ozone, as you probably are aware, latches onto odor ions. So the way an odor comes about is a particle generates an ion. Those ions are attracted to the receptors in your nose, and when they touch the receptors, your brain signals, oh, this is an odor, this is what it smells like. So the Eden Pure Thunderstorm generates ozone that touches those odor ions before they make it to your nose and eliminates them. So it eliminates the odor, period, because your nose receptors can't get that ion, so it's gone. But now what it also does is it generates plasma, so bacteria and viruses are also eliminated. So it gets rid of odors, it gets rid of bacteria, it gets rid of viruses, it gets rid of pet dander, it gets rid of pollen, gets rid of dust, and you can get 3 of them for less than $200 and save $200. All you do, you go to EdenPureDeals.com and you put in the discount code ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. This hour is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. The Frost family, look, if you want to use the Frost family's First Liberty Building and Loan for your business, reach out to them at firstlibertyga.com. But what I want to tell you this, we're Thanksgiving week. The Frost family are extremely generous people, and they have been helping a lot of disadvantaged people this holiday season with Thanksgiving. So I actually want to spend my time, instead of telling you about their business, telling them thank you for all the charitable work that they have been doing. They really are good people. And if your business is looking to grow, they've been helping businesses since the 90s. Reach out to them, firstlibertyga.com. You get all their contact info there, and they help businesses all around the country. They're in Georgia, but it doesn't matter where your business is, firstlibertyga.com. When we come back, I want to talk about the cabinet picks. We got phone calls of people talking about the cabinet picks. But first, I got to say one thing, and that is thank you. Thank you to everybody who was very nice on Friday night. I felt my age. I went with my buddies, Jimmy, Jason Allen, and a friend of theirs. They're the guys from True Precision. They wanted to take me to a Manchester Orchestra concert. I love Manchester Orchestra. Have for a very long time. And I got a lot of, I've discovered friends who are friends of or who are fans of theirs. And so it's like, yes, I want to go. So we went to dinner. I got recognized at the restaurant. It was kind of funny. And then we go to this place, and it is a packed house, standing room only. And it was a very cool venue, but the Eastern in Atlanta. And it was great. But after about 3 hours of standing on my feet, I had not broken my toe a couple of weeks ago, but I smashed my toe, and it's still badly bruised. I can move it, and it doesn't hurt. But 3 hours on my foot was so swollen I could barely get my shoe off when I made it back to the hotel. So I'm hobbling around there. But a lot of people, right? First of all, the number of people who were shocked to see me at a concert. I know I don't like people, and I'm in this place piled in with piles and piles of people. And then Jimmy and Jason are the two most extroverted people I know. By the time I left, they were friends with half the room. But I got out of there. It was very cool, though. Manchester Orchestra, if you're not familiar with their music, check them out. They're a great group. But everybody's very nice, so thank you very much. Yes, that really was me. People were very shocked to see me out and about on a Friday night in Atlanta. I was, too. I assure you, no one was more shocked than I was that I would go to a concert in Atlanta in a packed house, but it was great. When we come back, the cabinet picks. There have been some good ones. Boy, have there been some clunkers. And we should discuss the good and the bad. And what happened with Kelly Loeffler. On Friday, the Wall Street Journal, multiple media outlets said she would be the ag pick. She wound up not being. I do have some knowledge from a source with the Trump transition team about what actually happened there, and I will fill you in on that. So much more. Your phone calls, 877-973-7425. When we come back, you're listening to The Eric Erickson Show across the nation.